Maybe now? Maybe now. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. I don't know if this is working at all. Check, check, one, two, three. All right, hopefully that's not a sign of clipping. Maybe it is a sign of clipping. The little light there. All right. Hi. I've never done this before. Never done any kind of live streaming video thing. Just doing this as a test, to be honest, to make sure my equipment works and see how this camera does. The lighting is freaking terrible. I'll have to work on lighting. Add that to the list. Um, also, I'm supposed to be doing this with a partner. My buddy Rob was going to be a part of this. We've been talking about doing a podcast for a long time. So, just to make sure that we have the capability of getting out there, getting a live audience, I'm not really convinced in this modern era that anybody you know has any desire to hear what I have to say as a 40 something white dude. Um, and you know, there's a lot going on, but there's also a lot of voices and there's a lot of people talking about it. And why would you listen to me? Well, just a little bit about myself, I guess. I'm a former Navy nuke reactor operator. What the hell's that? When out of high school, I recruited to go to Nuclear Power Training Command in South Carolina and learn how to operate a nuclear reactor for a submarine. And I did that for a couple years, passed through the pipeline, and then went to my first boat in September 2000. And I was stationed in Groton, Connecticut, and I had a rather auspicious 1 year anniversary on my boat. That was as you may know, September 2001. So I did 3 years of my naval service was peacetime essentially, and then the last three, it was 6 year enlistment because of the nuclear program. The last three was global war and terror. And there's a lot of guys out there right now talking from the spec ops community. Everybody, post Bin Laden especially, is rah rah Navy SEALs, rah rah Delta Force, and quite frankly, I am too. I mean, those guys kick ass, and I like the capabilities that they had. The type of things that they did were, you know, interesting, fascinating, and quite frankly, I mean, I had thought about going, trying to go Special Forces Army when I was slightly younger. Obviously, movies had a big influence on me, and seeing Rambo and the original The Green Berets movie with John Wayne made me just kind of think like Special Forces dudes were legit. Also had I'm related to some guys that were Green Berets in Nam, and I just thought, you know, that's the thinking man's game if you're going to go into the military. So I considered that for a long time, and then I read a book about the LRPs in Vietnam, the Long Range Reconnaissance Patrols, which were I don't want to say the forebears to the modern Rangers. In some ways they were, but the Rangers were disbanded after World War II, and they weren't really brought back and reorganized as Rangers until very late in the Vietnam War. In this, I can't remember the exact year. It was like early '70s, and before that, they were either LRPs or LRRPs. So I read a book about them, and I was just like, okay, those guys were legit. They were actually like one of the few combat effective units in Vietnam that is like, you know, accomplish their missions more often than not and had a very high kill counts with low death tolls on their own end. So they were the most effective units in Vietnam. And when I read that, I was like, you know what, that's pretty cool. I I might want to do that. I was talked out of it by a teacher my senior year who was very influential on me, and he was had been in the Air Force in Korea, and he basically said, you know, get a job in the military that will pay you when you get out. That was his big thing. He's like, you go Rangers, what are you going to do? Swim 100 yards underwater, pop up and strangle me to death with your belt? Okay, cool, but nobody's going to pay you to do that. So, be a helicopter pilot was actually his advice. Um, I was like, okay. And, it was, to an 18-year-old kid, that's not what you want to hear. But it was good advice. Um, and I wasn't actually listening to him when he said that. I mean, I was listening. Obviously, I remember it. But my full intent was to actually go ahead and go down to the Army recruiter and join the Rangers over winter break. And as luck would have it, my senior year of high school, I was uh, struggling a bit because I had moved out on my own. The beginning during the summer between junior and senior year of high school, I became independent at 17 and was started off working at Wawa because I was still 17 and couldn't serve alcohol yet. And as soon as I turned 18 in October, I got a job waiting tables in a fine dining restaurant where I could serve wine and things like that. And your options for making money as somebody 18 years old are kind of limited, but that was a good way for me to make real good money and support myself in my spare time. So I was in school till 2:30, and then I'd rush to work after school every day at 3 o'clock and work a 3 to 11 shift. So I was making money, but my grades were bad and everything. And I had been trying to get into the Naval Academy actually initially before I read the Lerps book. I'd been trying to get into the Naval Academy, and my grades were just suffering too bad because I was working too much and not doing my schoolwork. So I knew that there was no way I was going to get into the Naval Academy with those kind of grades, and I didn't have any money to go to college any other way. So my options were severely limited, and so I knew the military was going to be it. Um, and the Naval Academy thing had been the initial dream, and then I started thinking uh, Rangers. So when I had that conversation with my one civics teacher, he told me that um, I had still had my mind set on Rangers. I was going to go do that. And as luck would have it, um, I was in my physics class, which was my last class of the day, and the naval recruiter had come in uh, that morning. I was in study hall that morning, and I was a door greeter at the high school. Me and a girl sat at a desk basically right in front of the front door and just did our work. And then as people come in, we'd greet them and either direct them to the office or wherever they were going. And this naval guy came in. He was a electronics technician, first class, nuclear, and he was wearing his winter blue um, working uniform, working winter blues. It's that we called it the Johnny Cash uniform with the black shirt, black pants, black tie at the time. This is 90s. And it's got all your ribbons on and your pins and all that stuff. And I recognized right away his submarine pin, submarine warfare pin, and his ballistic missile deterrent patrol pin. And he asked where my physics teacher's classroom was, and I had remembered at that point that she had said the week before that this guy was going to be coming in and talking to the class because we're a physics class and it's nuclear power, so he'll talk about application of what we're actually learning in the classroom. And I said, well, it'd be easier if I just showed you I'm heading that way, and the period's just basically over anyway. So I walked to to my teacher's classroom, and on the way, I said, "Oh, I see you were on a boomer. You know, what was that like, or something to that effect." He's like, how'd you recognize that?" And I said, you got your boomer pin." He's like, "Well, how'd you know that?" And I was like, "I've been playing 6080i Hunter Killer on my PC for uh, for the last couple months because I wanted to go to the Naval Academy, and it's not going to work out." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And then I showed him the classroom, and so I leave. So of course now, I wasn't even thinking